to get Neo actually going. So I'm going to actually take this through on my own right now, and let's see whether we can actually get Neo to join us at some point. So, guys, let me just start by talking about the entire approach that government has taken up until now on the fourth industrial revolution, which has been, in fact, to remain utterly clueless. Now, if you remember what our deputy president was standing up in Parliament and talking about, it became quite clear that he really did not have any idea what this thing was that government has a habit of talking about, which they refer to as the fourth industrial revolution. Now, when we speak about the changes that are coming around the fourth industrial revolution, most people have this habit of making comparisons with the effects of automation that happened during the industrial revolution as we know it. So essentially, we know that manual labor got replaced en masse by automation. So it meant things like tailors became obsolete as clothing suddenly was made by machinery, but you still had a scenario where this needed to be driven by human beings who were driving the actual machinery. The fourth industrial revolution is based on a couple of premises. The one is that you'll actually have automation that occurs as a direct result of changes in technology, but more crucially, the automation of the processes by artificial intelligence. Now, when we speak of automation of processes by artificial intelligence, the question has to be whether anything that is currently being done by a human being, which involves a limited set of inputs and which requires that you have the ability to, let me say, sorry, I'm getting my tongue twisted here because Neo is trying to get on board. Let me just take back and take a very typical example. Right now, if you are driving a truck between Johannesburg and Durban on a regular basis, there's a finite set of information that's required to complete that task. And right now, that finite set of information can only be done by a human being. For example, if you are carrying a load of fuel, that fuel has to be picked up at the fuel depot, and then it has to be delivered to, let's say, a fuel station along the route. Currently, a human being will pull up with the tanker at the fuel station, get it fueled up, then negotiate various routes to eventually get down to the destination. And at the point that they get to the destination, that tanker then gets hooked up to an outlet and the fuel gets offloaded. Now, on the assumption that those tasks actually require a great deal of skill. So you need someone who has the capability of hooking up, firstly, the fuel line that goes into the fuel tanker. Then you need someone who has the ability to actually drive the truck down to the destination, as well as negotiate the traffic that's along the way. And then when you finally get to the destination, to have someone who can go through the process of then connecting the outlet from that fuel tanker into the Bowser that is then going to provide the fuel supply that people then come and fill up their cars at some point. Now, picture a scenario where the person who is now ending up driving the truck is no longer required to actually do so. So I'm talking about now that vehicles are close to the point of being completely automated. We've already seen that Tesla's self-drive functionality enables people to get onto a freeway in their current state and disconnect literally from any responsibility in terms of driving. I currently have friends and former colleagues who live in the US who get into their car in the morning, they drive to the nearest freeway on-ramp, and then just turn over control of their vehicle to Tesla's autopilot. And they carry on with their work until they end up getting to their off-ramp, at which point Tesla gives them a shout and says it's time for you to take control again, and they end up driving to their destination. So if you picture that same scenario now applied to trucks, because we are between 5 years or at most 10 years away from a scenario where that's going to happen, that truck driver's job immediately becomes obsolete, because the bulk of the road between Durban and Johannesburg, as an example, is multi-lane highway that is actually very easily navigable if you happen to have autopilot capabilities, and as long as there is appropriate bandwidth on the road. Now, certainly in terms of the cell phone towers that are up along almost the entire route, right now, that technology actually is already possible. The only thing that actually prevents a scenario where we can actually hand over automated control are a couple of things. The one is that we have other crazy drivers on the road who might end up blocking the road, which ends up obstructing the truck. And of course, we have the more crucial problem in terms of the potential for people actually ending up hijacking the truck. But let's work on the assumption that those are solvable problems and we can actually get rid of them. How then do we have a situation where that truck driver's job does not become obsolete? So that truck driver who currently is earning in the region of, let's say, 25 to 30,000 Rand per month, and that truck driver's take-home pay is then responsible for feeding an entire family, and it's a support structure for a larger extended family. When that truck driver's job becomes obsolete, and let's say that truck driver is around about 45 to 50 years of age, if that truck driver's job now becomes obsolete, we cannot now start retraining that truck driver to do something else with his life that is still going to keep him productive. So the idea that we can suddenly take jobs that get rendered obsolete by automation and hand them over to people who now start learning to code is just totally nuts. You can teach youngsters to code because their minds are actually receptive to the idea of learning new things. But you cannot take someone who is pretty much towards the end of their career and make them productive members of society in entirely new technologies that they have not had any experience with. So right now, everyone thinks in terms of truck drivers, and we say that, well, you know, it's only truck drivers. It's not going to affect the knowledge economy. Now, actually, that's not true at all. Let's take, for example, the question of lawyers. Now, lawyers, if you think about it, they actually do a relatively finite set of things in their day-to-day lives. And when I say lawyers, I'm not talking about people who go to defend you in court and have to respond immediately to evidence that gets raised and to be able to ask questions. I'm talking about the day-to-day stuff that lawyers do. They draw up contracts that are related to deals between people. They issue summons for things, for bills that have not been paid. They will draw up contracts between parties, and those contracts normally follow a particular formula. You might be ending up selling things. You might be ending up having a contract for a particular service. And if you think about it, we are now at the stage in our lives where those contracts can actually be drawn up by artificial intelligence, because essentially you, as the person who is commissioning the lawyer, and I say lawyer because the lawyer now becomes a computer, and you tell the artificial intelligence entity the parameters that you want in terms of how you want this contract drawn up. You want to make sure that the person doesn't default on the contract and that you get paid on time. And artificial intelligence takes care of drawing up the contract. Let's say that you're a chartered accountant. Chartered accountants are currently among the most highly paid people in the country. And we've seen how that actually turned out in terms of auditors who failed spectacularly to enforce any sort of checks and balances around all of the companies involved in state capture. We've seen KPMG's lame excuses. Artificial intelligence, on the assumption that it's tapped into your accounting systems, is able to keep constant track of everything that you are doing in that business. So on the assumption that it's connected to your bank accounts, that it's connected to, let's say, point of sale, it's connected to your inventory, and all of that is in turn controlled to some extent by artificial intelligence. The extent to which a chartered accountant is a necessary process for ensuring that your audits are up to scratch is going to be at an entirely different level to what we currently have. Right now, we are totally dependent upon the chartered accountants to ensure that the company is not crooking the books. Artificial intelligence, on the other hand, is going to be able to flag if appropriate inputs are not coming in, and it looks like the amount of money that's going out versus the amount of money that's going in and where it should be spent on the budget is out of whack, will immediately be able to raise red flags. And more to the point, artificial intelligence cannot actually be bribed. You can potentially reprogram it so that it's doing something strange and wonderful, but it cannot be bribed. So, fourth industrial revolution cuts across every single field that we've had up until now. And the impact upon our society in terms of job losses across the spectrum is going to be massive. And the challenge for us now, throughout the world, it's not just a challenge that occurs to us in South Africa. The challenge for us across the world is to ensure that we don't suddenly have a scenario where people who have trained all their lives and have been otherwise productive now suddenly become dysfunctional members of society, because the shakeup to society that results is absolutely massive. So, having said as much as I've said right now, I'm now going to go and take a look at the questions, and let's see whether I can get to some of them. So, let's see. 6-Foot Scream is saying, but our education levels are in the toilet, so we don't have good students coming out of the education system. Absolutely correct. But the issue right now, as I'm trying to say, is not how we take care of finding jobs for the youngsters who are coming into the market, but it's how we actually create a safety net at this point for all of the people who are going to be out of work. And as a capitalist, to talk about a social safety net might sound a bit absurd to you, but the impact upon our society when all of these people are suddenly no longer productive is going to cause devastation, and that's what we need to be addressing. So, there's Gopalong Lakoto says 5 to 10 years for technology to be ready, another 5 to 10 years to convince government, politicians, and regulatory authorities that the tech is ready. I don't believe that government is actually going to have any choice on this, because we will end up being overtaken by events. We've seen the impact of this at so many levels. Government tried desperately to prevent the impact of data suddenly making the telcos obsolete. And there were all sorts of regulatory hurdles and frameworks that were put in place. And we suddenly see that government is on the back foot. Government is now trying to put a stop to people going off grid with their own solar installations. Again, government is completely incapable of stopping that, because you can actually buy your solar kits off the shelf, go and connect yourself and take yourself off grid. Government is now trying to stop people from installing water collection units at their homes, because we are now harvesting rainwater and we are suddenly no longer buying water from city of Joburg or city of Cape Town and paying outrageously inflated rates for the water when it is available, which means that there's a decline in revenue that goes through to the municipality. Again, it is too late for them to stop it. The taxi association, the Meter Taxi Association, has tried desperately to find a way to prevent Uber from taking over the market. Again, they're not in a position to do so. So, yes, Mr. Lakoto, I'm taking your point that government is way behind, but we will actually leapfrog government in spite of the fact that government has not yet caught up with us. Let's have a look at what else we've got. 6-Foot Scream says, I'm critical of automated vehicles, not trains, though. We will eventually get to the stage where there are enough of us who have actually taken ourselves off-grid in terms of not doing the driving ourselves, that there will then be pressure on the rest of society to actually go off-grid as well. So we should already start anticipating a scenario where you have our N3 link between Durban and Johannesburg, and I keep coming back to it because it's the largest double-lane highway in all of the continent, and it is one of the most busy. But think of a scenario where you suddenly take one of those lanes on that highway and you turn it over to automation. So what that means is that once you get onto an automation-only lane, you turn over control to your computer. And what that means is that the computer, because it's connected to the grid, to the vehicles that are in front of you, you pretty much have a scenario where you're driving bumper to bumper along the entire way, because of the fact that the computers are constantly talking to each other, and your car automatically slows down in anticipation of the fact that a car has slowed down 3 or 4 kilometers away as part of the chain. And so the question of overtaking or not overtaking becomes absolutely irrelevant. You are all moving as quickly and as efficiently as that line can actually allow you to do. And this is coming very soon. We will see it very quickly deployed in many other parts of the world. And I have no doubt that China will actually be first in line to get this done, because they've been building their freeways with this in mind. So, but in as much as we say that we are distrustful of it, it doesn't matter. It's going to be coming. Louis is pointing out that Volvo and Mercedes have working self-driving trucks. That's already in place. Absolutely correct. Vitali Fund. Well, yeah, good one. We have 8 million school pupils that will finish in the next 10 years. With the fourth industrial revolution, there won't be much they will be able to do. Unemployment will just increase as time goes by. Absolutely correct. And one of the reasons why we've been pushing so strongly for this concept of a negative income tax, which if you check through our videos on this channel, you will find the negative income tax as video number 10 in our series of how we want to solve problems in our country. Negative income tax is a scenario where we are effectively subsidizing jobs at the lower end of the scale, which then allows entry level of people, unemployables we are talking about, who are currently leaving school, so that there are cost-effective ways of introducing them into the workplace. But we have to start making provision now for ensuring that the current obstacles that we have to allowing people to get into the workplace, single obstacle that we have that pulls us back, our labor laws. We've put in place labor laws that make it almost impossible for people to hire and fire at will. And those labor laws are also putting in place really impossible minimum wage levels. And again, those are things that absolutely have to be addressed urgently, because the fourth industrial revolution is going to be driven by the gig economy. That means that people are not going to hold on one job. You're going to be doing various things at various times of the day, and a lot of those jobs are going to end up being online. And you cannot have a scenario where each of those jobs is going to end up paying you a minimum wage. It's just not going to work. Our labor laws have to be ripped apart, shredded, in fact, and we need to go back to the drawing board and build an economy that's based on a negative income tax, and hope that things actually work out from that point. But that is the starting point that we need to work with. I'm just going to take a couple of last questions. Let's see what else we've got out here. Please excuse me while I just scroll back. Benita says, if you guys want a seat in parliament, you should be more active in social media and campaign for those who live under rocks as well. I have to explain to everyone how you are. Benita, thank you. You are absolutely correct. But we're relying to a large extent on people like you who are going out and telling people that we're out there. But I just want to pull us back to the conversation around the fourth industrial revolution. Let's just see what else we've got. Damn capitalists coming up with solutions like that. Yes, let's see. DA running ads. Someone's asking about seats for candidates. Steve Nunes has a question about our candidates. Steve, if it's okay with you, I will answer that question on Twitter later. But I think essentially, okay, look, I think let's try and wrap this up now, because I think we've got all of the questions that have been asked directly related to the fourth industrial revolution. So the specific points that we need to make is that government actually doesn't understand what's going to happen in terms of the fourth industrial revolution, but we need to start preparing ourselves at this point. And for all of us, we need to look at our jobs. If it is something that involves repetition and not creativity, then the chances are that it's going to be made obsolete by the fourth industrial revolution. And we need to now start looking at alternative forms of employment for ourselves if we're employed in those fields as the most crucial starting point, but also to recognize that for the generations to come, the skills that are going to be needed on their part have to be skills that cannot be fulfilled by artificial intelligence. In other words, they need to be skills that are primarily creative. The second point that we need to consider is how do we provide a way of ensuring that we don't have a zombie apocalypse at the point at which the fourth industrial revolution hits us, because people are going to be out of jobs en masse. And then how do we keep the economy ticking over when we no longer have those people actively contributing to the economy? Because everyone who is currently dependent upon those breadwinners buying their products or their services is also going to go toes up. So these are all things that we need to be thinking about. So on that note, I'm going to actually kill this this broadcast at this point, and hopefully we'll try and resolve our issues. We'll get Neo into the studio out here with us next time, and I think we can plan on revisiting this particular topic fairly soon, because we've had a fair amount of interest in it. So thank you for your time. I apologize once again for the fact that the technology failed us. Well, it's our failure. You know, we are supposed to be the ones who are good at tech, and we screwed up this time. Apologies, and we will definitely get it right next time. Thank you for tuning in.